Hello, young illustrators. My name is Robert Young, and I am an illustrator, a designer, animator, printmaker, fine artist, and professor of illustration. And today I'm going to talk about social media. You've all probably been very familiar with social media. It's pretty widely used. Most people have or have had some form of Facebook or MySpace or DeviantArt or Instagram or Twitter or something. And even people that don't have an account or don't post things there, they go to YouTube or it's just kind of been a facet of entertainment on the internet for a long time now, and certainly now in a global pandemic, the sort of more social features of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook are how we keep in contact with each other, how we share events and information. So it's really no surprise that it's used by artists to promote themselves and get work and interact with creative communities, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So the three that I'm going to spend the most time on are YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And the most of that time will be on Instagram. It's by far the largest platform used by illustrators and designers, and even now that they've added more long form video features with reels, lots of animators posting demo reels on there. So that's the biggest. There's also Facebook, which is declining in use, but Facebook owns Instagram, so they're pretty connected. If you have an Instagram business account, I think they force you to have a Facebook account for your page for your Instagram and all of that. It's very interconnected. Tumblr is something that was really, really wildly popular up until 5 or 6 years ago, and then they made some policy changes specifically about not safe for work art and started taking people's pages down and stuff, and there was kind of a mass exodus. So it's still around, but not a lot of people, not nearly as many people use it. You don't have that idea of Tumblr fame anymore. LinkedIn is something that is more business oriented. It is a really good tool to use to find who the art director is at a company, though. And that's mostly what I use it for. I'm not trying to find illustrator jobs through LinkedIn, but if I want to know if somebody is still the art director at a magazine or a media company or something, I can try to find them on LinkedIn and see, if they're still working there, and also see people that they have related to them in that same company or in other companies. A lot of art directors are friends with each other, so that can be really useful. DeviantArt was, it's 20 years old now. It was wildly popular 20 years ago. People kind of started to treat it like it was kind of a joke, or that it was very, very amateurish. But a lot of pros have used it for a long time, especially in concept art and visual development and sci-fi and fantasy kind of genre book cover fields. So it still exists. I've even heard of it kind of gaining in popularity again. So it's always worth checking out. Again, it's free account, so what's the harm? Working Not Working is pretty neat because it is kind of vetted. So it's mostly industry professionals. You've got art directors, designers, illustrators, animators, 3D artists, motion designers, all kinds of stuff. And that's going to be the big difference in social media from something like Facebook or ArtStation or DeviantArt or even Instagram, is that you don't have a lot of hobbyists. Not that there's anything wrong with being a hobbyist in the arts. I mean, I think everybody would benefit from having some experience just playing around with image making. It's a great way to understand the world. But they're not people that are going to tend to hire you or give you really high quality constructive feedback about your work. So Working Not Working is a pretty good place for that. ArtStation is pretty tailored towards the animation and game industries. Lots and lots of working professionals have portfolios on ArtStation. So if you want to see process, if you want to interact with people, they also have job boards. So that's really cool, and that's something that Instagram, Facebook, Twitter they don't have. Behance is a portfolio site owned by Adobe. They also have a lot of job boards, and I know listening to podcasts, talking to other illustrators and designers and animators, I've heard a lot of stories of people getting jobs through Behance. So it's definitely something to look into. Dribble's kind of the same way. It is a little bit more tailored towards graphic design, but very similar to Behance and ArtStation in that they have a job board, but lots of industry professionals and art directors. If you're making animated work or any sort of longer form video work, YouTube and Vimeo are really your platforms there. So lots of animation demo reels and videos where people are showing off what they can do as animators, which is pretty much your portfolio at that point. You can find those people on YouTube and Vimeo. So let's talk about some tips. Format your images. Make sure that the stuff that you're posting on these sites looks good for that site. Instagram used to be a square format only, and then that's changed several times. They've kind of added more and more functionality, the ability to create posts that have multiple images in them. You used to have third-party apps to format things correctly, but if your work looks good on the platform, then your viewer doesn't have to do the work of trying to imagine how it's supposed to look. You've done that work for them. Use hashtags. For something like Twitter, or obviously like YouTube, DeviantArt, ArtStation, hashtags are probably not going to do you a ton of good. But for Instagram, that's how you get your work in front of like-minded people. If you hashtag it illustration or design, or if you're doing something for a design challenge, if you are doing something about a certain topic like basketball or comics or whatever, you can use hashtags and then try to get it in front of like-minded people. So finding your audience is always really super important and very difficult as an artist, and that's how you do it on Instagram. Also use all the features. So for something like YouTube or DeviantArt or ArtStation or something, that might just be posting your work. But some of them, like Instagram, has stories and reels, and you can use filters and stories, or you can make polls and ask people questions, or engage with people in different ways. You can even sell things through Instagram. So if you use all of those features, which is what Instagram wants you to do, they're gonna in theory reward you for that by getting your work in front of more eyes. Pay attention to what kind of engagement you get when you post things at certain times. So if you only ever post at 3 o'clock in the morning, and your target audience isn't awake at 3 o'clock in the morning, then Instagram is not going to push your work. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But you want to post things when people are going to see them. There's millions and millions of posts on Instagram at this point, so it's really easy on any of these social media platforms to get really lost in the sea of content. When you do find that people are reacting really well to certain images, if you post more of that sort of work, you're probably going to get similar reactions. So post more of what people like. And really, the same goes for your portfolio, right? Like, if you're getting hired to do a certain thing, if you keep doing that thing, you're probably going to get hired to do that thing more. People are responding to it. Respond to comments. Respond to people that interact with your page on any of these. That's how people follow you. That's how to keep them from unfollowing you, or to, sort of set up a system where maybe they're going to repost your work or recommend you to somebody else. And if that's a person that has a lot of followers as well, then you're getting your work in front of even more people. Engage with their work. Any of these social media platforms are really, really great place to find art directors, other artists, creative studios, design studios. Some companies that have sort of departments that seek out new talent will have an Instagram page just for that purpose, or a Twitter page. And so if you follow that stuff, engage with it. You don't have to do it all the time, but sometimes it can help you out a lot. But the most important tip for any sort of engagement with any social media platform involving your work, or really anything else, is don't tie your self-worth to social media performance. I'm going to talk a lot about that in this lecture, and it's really important. I think it's a very crucial thing to understand as an artist, that likes and reshares, they don't really necessarily equal anything. They certainly don't pay bills. They can, but don't always get you more work. It's a little bit of a false economy. So, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But first, let's talk a little bit about YouTube. So I've only just started using YouTube really when I started this lecture format. And I'm not putting a ton of stock in it. I'm certainly not trying to be a famous YouTuber, so your mileage may vary on that. But one of the cool things that it has is just the ability to look at metrics and who's looking at your stuff, and when and where are they from, and how are they interacting with it. I personally like seeing that sort of thing. It tries to demystify the process a little bit. That said, YouTube is definitely not upfront with why or how they show what to who that uses their platform. But there it is. I can see who, how many people liked what and when and what time. Other than that, if you're an animator, this is where you're probably going to post your demo reel. This is also a great place to find tutorials, to find other people's demo reels. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that none of this is vetted. So when you find tutorials, they might be outdated. They could have just been wrong in the first place. Anybody can upload the content, so that doesn't mean that they necessarily are the best source for that information. You've probably all been told at some point in your lives how to do something, and then tried it and then found out later that was the wrong way. So that can happen on YouTube or Twitter or Instagram or anything else. So let's move on to Twitter. Twitter, I use this. This is probably where I find the most posts about companies seeking illustrators or competitions, or people offering mentorships, or discourse on visual culture. Like, there's tons of stuff on Twitter. It's really all, the quality you get is really going to be linked pretty heavily to the quality of the people that you're following. And this is with anything. If you sort of follow a bunch of accounts of industry professionals, and you're going to be getting good advice. If you're following the accounts of people who, you like their work, and maybe they're doing really good work, but their work isn't being hired, they don't have clients, those aren't necessarily people that you can follow the advice of and get the results that you want. So, and that can be the same for industry professionals. I mean, not everybody knows why their stuff is successful, or so you always have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. it's there. You can combine a lot of it and try to figure out some stuff that works for you, but the stuff that worked for somebody on Twitter isn't necessarily going to work for you. Also, if it was something that worked for them 10 years ago, it might not work now. The industries change. But this is a really good place to follow art directors and other artists and engage with their work. Post your own work. Twitter's not the best about posting images and video especially, but you can use it. Hashtags don't, you can use hashtags on Twitter. I've not found much success with them. I feel like everybody's experience with social media as an artist is very different. Some people, they that's like their biggest piece of advice is to post stuff on Twitter and hashtag it. And some people that just doesn't seem to do anything. So there's a lot of mystery in this. Let's move on to Instagram. So Instagram is, in my opinion, it's the biggest, probably most used visual social media platform for artists. Lots and lots and lots of people use it. And they kind of use it in a different way. It doesn't feel like it gets quite as toxic as Twitter. There certainly aren't, as many stories in the news about horrific Twitter accounts and white supremacists and stuff, but not that they don't exist on Instagram, but just doesn't feel like it invades my feed as often as it does my Twitter feed. So, if you're using it purely for work, that can be a really good thing to keep non-illustration posts or non-whatever posts out of your feed. I don't know where I was going with that. That happens sometimes. So, you can see my Instagram page. Nothing special. You've got some followers. You can make a little bio. You can link to your website. There's some features that you get if you make a business page. I think like linking to your website. And also getting some user metrics. So if you want that stuff, like I showed on YouTube of, who's engaging with your posts, you have to have a business page for that. I use it a lot to save work of people that I think are cool. I'm always looking at images. I follow all kinds of people on Instagram, and when they post stuff that inspires me, or since I'm a teacher, sometimes I save things just to show to students that I think they'll be interested in. Really, really good for that. You can make individual boards. It's almost like a little Pinterest inside of Instagram. Going back to that idea of kind of critique and quality of critique, any of these things, they're free services for the most part. You can make a page and you can say whatever you want. So if Creech.Brian says that your work is laughably terrible, he can do that. It's important to remember that not every Creech.Brian's opinion matters about art. I don't know this person. They got a private page. Never interacted with them before. It happens sometimes. I've had people say horrible things on my Instagram page, personal attacks, using racial or sexual epithets, really nasty stuff. There's just something that happens when you give somebody anonymity and a platform to say whatever they want, that some people use that to say really horrible things. So, if you get negative stuff on the internet, who cares? It comes with the territory. I wish it didn't, but it does happen. The same thing happens when, your best friend or your parents or somebody comment on your stuff and they're like, that's amazing. Friends are supportive, family are supportive, I hope. And that doesn't mean that, they know what they're looking at or how to critically evaluate an image. So it's really good self-esteem boost. And a lot about social media is more related to self-esteem than the actual industry. But, just take it for that. Like it's people looking out for you. That's cool. So let's talk about some pros. Pros, there's a large audience. Any social media platform, there are millions of people on there that could potentially see your work. Obviously, that's not something that existed before the internet. You had to physically take your work to somebody. And if you worked in publishing or editorial, you had to physically take your work to New York. So if you didn't live in New York, you were kind of SOL. But now, I've been hired by people that I've never even been to that state, just because I was able to contact them through the internet. They're mostly free. I'll kind of get into that a little bit later, but you don't have to spend money on social media. Art directors and other illustrators use social media, so they can art directors find people to hire through that. Animation studios, design studios, companies. That can be really beneficial. Or you can see art directors talk about how they hire people. Give little bits of information. Lots of art directors are really cool and open online about sharing information to help people find them and to help them make work that is going to be hireable. Of all the industries I've been involved in, visual arts and illustration and design feel like the most supportive and the least competitive. Social media has a lot to do with that. Critique, you can get critique through social media. It really kind of depends on the quality of your audience. Quality is always more important than quantity, and especially for social media, if every single Instagram follower you have is following you because of that one time you posted Naruto fan art, and so they only like the Naruto stuff, maybe the critique is not what you're going to get out of those people. But if you're following other illustrators whose work you appreciate and, they follow you back, or, an art director follows you and gives you a comment here or there, that can be really useful. And it's something that when you're not in art school, or if you never went to art school, is something that is really lacking. That's the whole point of art school, is to have a group of people who look at your work and tell you what they think. I think the best part about social media, the biggest biggest thing that it has going for it, is the ability to elevate and share other people's work. So I think it works really poorly when it's treated as a very self-centered platform. And a lot of that has to do with the way social media platforms decide who to show what posts. But, support your friends. It's free. Support strangers whose work you like. When you see something cool, share it. That helps them out. It helps you out. You can make lasting connections that way, potentially. But definitely, don't look at it like some competitive field, or, looking at someone else's number of likes and thinking that they must have a great career, because, they don't always. Another pro is some of them have job boards, like Dribble, Working Not Working, ArtStation all have job boards. So, if you're looking for freelance gigs, especially when you're first starting out, that can be a really helpful tool. So let's talk about the cons. The first one is the algorithm. The algorithm. This thing is horrific. So with Instagram, there's this algorithm, and it decides who sees what. So I've got a case study here in a minute, but you can have 1,000 or 3,000 or 10,000 followers and post an image, and not everyone that you follow or that follows you sees that image that you posted. It's really, really frustrating. And one of the most frustrating aspects of that is that that's not how it started out. When Instagram started, the timeline was in order, and if you scrolled through all of it, you saw every post from everyone that you followed. Now, maybe you don't see that post from your cousin's birthday party or something because Instagram decided that you didn't need to see it. So that is by far the sort of crux of the most insidious part of social media is this sort of marketed, tailored, invisible thing that tries to decide what you're going to see based on what they think you're going to buy, what you're going to interact with, and what's going to keep you on the website or the app the longest. That ties directly into the pay to win thing. So, lots of social media have ways that you can sort of boost your content by paying them money. Instagram and Facebook, I think, are the most aggressive about that. I mean, if I don't post something on Instagram one week, I'll get little messages from them about how many more people my post could have reached for just $10 or $20. It's really similar to the way that microtransactions work in games, especially when they target kids. It's kind of crappy. It can also, if you're not getting good Instagram engagement and you feel like your work's really good, but it's just not getting in front of people, they offer you this little golden ray of hope that you can just give them a couple of bucks and they'll help you out. And often it doesn't even work that way. You give them a couple of bucks and you get a bunch of new followers or likes that disappear when those accounts disappear because they weren't real accounts. Another big con is that there can be too much content. Millions and millions of posts on these things, like, it's hard to get your work seen. And it's definitely not as effective as getting your work in front of specific people. So it's kind of this big shotgun approach, and it's just really easy for your work to get lost. Critique. There's terrible critique. Again, I've been told horrible things by strangers on the internet for no other reason than I posted something. You give somebody some internet anonymity and they really use it to do awful stuff sometimes. Another big con is theft. You're putting your work out there, and there are people that, for whatever reason, will take that work, will image capture it, download the image on sites that allow that, and post it to Society6 or Redbubble or some other sort of small run artwork site, and they'll make money off of your work. And you can, when you find out, you can tell them, and maybe they take it down or whatever, but the damage has kind of been done. People will repost things as if it was their own. I know tons of illustrators who have had people basically pretend to be them on the internet. I don't really know what the gain is there, but it happens, and it can be a giant pain in the ass. That goes into misrepresentation, and that's not just with people stealing work. That's also people pretending to be an art director or an illustration agent that really aren't. Again, it's some people use the anonymity of the internet to really do insidious things. So it's just like an extra thing that you have to watch out for that doesn't happen as often in real life. Impermanence. So, Tumblr is a great example of this. 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you were Tumblr famous, that might equal jobs. That might, you could get millions of notes or whatever they were called, tons of fans. They buy your work. It's great. And then Tumblr makes a couple of changes and tanks the platform. People, run away. So all that work could be for nothing. Whereas that doesn't really happen when you put in a lot of work making real world ties with people. It's very impermanent. There's also can be a false sense of success or a false sense of failure. You could have a post on Instagram with 10,000 likes and, I don't know, 1 million reshares or something, and not make a dime off of anybody going to your webpage and hiring you or buying your print or anything. Just because someone shares your work or likes it on Instagram, it doesn't really mean that they think it's good or they think it's good enough to pay for. can often mean nothing. Trolls. So again, kind of in that idea with critique, with theft, with misrepresentation, there's just people that like to give people hell on the internet because they can. It's really sad, but there's nothing you can really do about it. You can ignore them, but nothing's gonna stop them. And it's not really in the interest of the social media platforms of the companies that own them to stop anybody from participating on their platform. So they're not going to do anything about it. And then the mental health impact. So, that can be trolls. It can be the false sense of success. It can be, kind of the comparing yourself to other people that you perceive as further along or more successful than you, or one of the things that you're not seeing is any sort of real representation of people's lives. So it can be really easy to look at somebody's page and think they're doing great, and they've got the same struggles that you do. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to a friend of mine who's an illustrator and kind of lamenting a little bit about a dry spell or not getting into a competition I thought I should have gotten into, and they'll say the same things to me. So even when I think somebody is doing great, they'll be like, oh, you got into that competition I didn't get into, or people have things going on in their personal lives. So it's not a window into any sort of truth, and that can have a heavy mental health impact. I mean, we don't even really know what kind of health impact just looking at your phone that often has. So it's something to really pay attention to. So here's a case study, a little bit on Instagram post engagement, just because this is something that I think about a lot. Not necessarily that I'm willing to do very much to try to get it to go up, because I don't really get a lot of jobs through Instagram. I get all of my jobs through interpersonal networking and meeting people at conventions, physically getting to talk to people face to face, conventions, conferences, workshops, industry events, galleries, whatever. So here's a post that I made of my D&D character that I've been playing with a group of friends for a long time, and one night I didn't have anything to do while everybody else was adventuring. I wasn't really in that part of the story. So I was like, hey, now would be a good time to draw my D&D character. And I posted it. I used some kind of regular illustration hashtags and some D&D hashtags. And I've got 3,000 some odd followers, and it got seen by 1,700 people and liked 206 times and saved 20 times and reshared and all of this stuff. This is kind of the screen that you see if you have a business account. And some more like how many of the accounts were unique and whether or not they clicked through to your profile and all of this stuff. So I was like, oh wow, that did really well. Stylistically, a lot of my work is similar. So this one was for some personal work I was doing on a book, and it's not in color, and it's about basketball instead of D&D, but I posted at the same time. It's similar work, similar quality, fits stylistically, and yet this only made it to 571 people. I have no idea why. And the thing about the algorithm is that Instagram doesn't know either. It's a predictive formula, so it changes based on what people are clicking on, what people are engaging with. So that creates a whole new market of people charging money to in theory help you tailor your Instagram page to target the best people. There's a lot of kind of con artist-y stuff going on. So it happens. I don't know why. Instagram doesn't know why, and they don't care. They just want people to stay on the app. And it's the same thing with YouTube, with Twitter, with Facebook. They want more engagement. So their job is to make money off of you. You are inventing the content that makes their platform successful. And we can't really rely on them to do the right thing. If you look at news surrounding social media companies, Facebook with the Cambridge Analytica leaks, with allowing pages to willfully and largely distribute misinformation about political issues, about race, about false news stories about COVID. Anti-vaccine movements are huge on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and it really takes a lot for Facebook to do anything about it. Twitter as well. So, keep in mind what the benefit is to you and what the benefit is to the company that owns the social media that you're providing content for. So, if social media has so many problems, how can we have a healthy relationship with it as working artists? I've mentioned some of these things, like you can't tie it to yourself as an artist. It's not part of you. It's just some extra thing. If you can use it to get your work in front of more people, great. If you don't feel like the risk is outweighing, or the reward is outweighing the risk, then you don't have to use social media. I think it's a myth that all artists need social media to get their work in front of art directors or people that would hire them. It's really not the case. If you can build a useful following on a social media platform, then do. If you can't, that's fine. There are plenty of people working that barely have a social media presence at all. Or people who, are gold medal winners or animation festival winners who are lauded in the industry that only have a few hundred followers on Instagram. If you're working in visual development, a lot of the time, or if you're working on huge entertainment properties, you can't post that work anyway. So, those people are getting work somehow. You can too. You do not have to have any relationship with social media whatsoever. Another way, I think, is to use it to elevate and share other people's work, to talk about causes that you're interested in. Not everything needs to be capitalized on or used as some sort of marketing tool. Like, things can just exist to share information freely. You can help other people out with it, and then that can kind of mitigate some of the negative aspects of judging yourself based on other people's work, or getting bad critique, or having posts that you really like not perform as well as you think they ought to. But yeah, in the end, if it doesn't feel healthy for you, if you're unable to navigate the program in a healthy way, then just walk away. Change your account. Change it to private for a while. Just take a break. It's not a big deal. It's not going to wreck your career. So the last thing, I think about this book a lot. It's called How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy by Jenny Odell. And this quote really resonates with me. It kind of sums up a lot of the feelings that I have about social media. But the villain here is not necessarily the internet or even the idea of social media. It is the invasive logic of commercial social media and its financial incentive to keep us in a profitable state of anxiety, envy, and distraction. That can be the business model, and it's a very, very effective business model. You don't have to participate in it if you don't want to. So that's it for my lecture on social media. I hope you found something useful in there. Obviously, a lot of these things and future lectures will have a lot of my own personal experiences and opinion in them. So, feel free to take all kinds of opinions on this sort of thing. There are definitely people who are bigger proponents of social media use than I am. I think it's good to be critical of things that you're involved in, so that they're held to account and that you can make them better, which is really what the idea of critique is. But yeah, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again later. Bye.